My name is Ryan Carter. I'm 33 years old and I live in Denver, Colorado. I'm an entrepreneur and I've spent the last 3 years building something I genuinely believed in, a sustainable design startup called Greencore Studio. 3 years of my life went into that company. 3 years of working 18-hour days, of pouring my personal savings into development, of sleeping 4 hours a night and waking up with a single thought: how do I make this work? I never questioned whether I should keep going. The doubt never came. Not once. I knew what I was building mattered, but there was someone in my life who saw it very differently. Her name was Melissa Harper. She was 29. We'd been together for 5 years, and we were engaged. I thought we were building a life together. Turns out I was the only one actually building anything. Melissa couldn't see the vision. She couldn't understand why I wasn't working a stable corporate job, collecting a consistent paycheck, climbing some predictable corporate ladder. To her, Greencore was just a hobby, an expensive one. She used to call it that. "Your expensive hobby, Ryan." She'd say it with this little laugh, like I was delusional. Like I was the guy at the party who keeps talking about his cryptocurrency investment, while everyone rolls their eyes. For years, I heard the same comments. Why aren't you making real money yet? When is this going to actually pay off? Why are you wasting time on this? Don't you see other people our age are buying houses? My friends' boyfriends have actual jobs. It was constant. The undermining, the sarcasm, the public comments about how I was chasing an impossible dream. But I never fought back. I never exploded. I just kept working. And then came the night that changed everything. If you enjoy stories of cold-blooded revenge and gripping plot twists, like this video and subscribe to the channel now. There are brand new, unreleased stories here every day, each one more intense than the last. I had scheduled dinner with some friends for a Friday evening in late September 2021, a nice restaurant downtown Denver. I was planning to announce something that night, something significant. 4 months earlier, back in late May 2021, a venture capital group from San Francisco had approached Greencore. They saw the potential. They saw what Melissa couldn't. Our proprietary low-carbon materials process and the 3 major B2B contracts we'd secured with Fortune 500 companies had caught their attention. They offered to acquire the company outright. Everything. All of it. $40 million. The deal was ready to close. The paperwork was done. That Friday dinner in late September was supposed to be the celebration. But Melissa had other plans. We were sitting around the table with 4 other couples, and I was just about to tell everyone the news when Melissa interrupted me mid-sentence. She didn't do it quietly. She did it loud enough that the whole table stopped and looked at her. "I cannot marry you," she said. She was looking right at me, but she was speaking for the table, for everyone to hear. "I cannot marry a failed dreamer. This isn't a relationship, this is charity, and I'm tired of it." Then she paused. She let it sit, and she took off her engagement ring and set it on the table like she was making a point that would echo forever. That was the moment. That was the betrayal, not from an enemy. From the person who was supposed to believe in me. From the person I'd trusted with my future. The table went silent. Everyone was staring. Some at her. Some at me. Some at the ring. I didn't yell, I didn't cry, I didn't make a scene. I just sat there for a moment processing what had happened. Then I picked up the check, I paid it, every cent of it, and I stood up. I looked at her one more time and I said nothing. I just left. That was the last conversation we had that night. But what happened next was the part that mattered. 2 days later, on Monday morning in late September 2021, I signed the contract. $40 million. Part of it up front, $15 million transferred immediately to Greencore's holding accounts, and part of it structured over the next 5 years based on performance metrics and integration benchmarks, with minority equity participation as part of the standard deal structure. But the point wasn't the structure. The point was that the deal was done. Greencore Studio was officially acquired. I sent an email to my core team that morning. Just a brief message. The acquisition had been finalized, and I wanted to meet with everyone in person to discuss next steps and what this meant for their futures. Some of them had been with me since the very beginning. They deserved to hear it from me, not from a press release or some industry announcement. Then I sat in my apartment in downtown Denver, looking out at the city skyline toward the mountains, and I let myself feel something. Not anger, not revenge fantasies, just relief. The kind of relief you feel when you've been holding your breath for 3 years and finally let it out. I didn't immediately tell anyone else beyond the core team. I didn't post on social media. I didn't make calls to friends or family. I celebrated quietly. I went for a run through downtown Denver. I got coffee from my regular spot near the office. I went about my weekend like it was any other weekend, because revenge, real revenge, the kind that actually matters, doesn't announce itself. Derives quietly. What I didn't know was that the news was already starting to move through the Denver tech and entrepreneurial community. These things spread fast in a city like Denver, especially in September when people return from summer patterns and start actively networking again. By Tuesday, the story was beginning to circulate. Local business publications started picking it up. Tech blogs focused on sustainable innovation, LinkedIn posts from people in the industry. The headline was straightforward. Sustainable design startup Greencore acquired for $40 million by San Francisco venture capital group. $40 million. That was the number that changed everything. By Wednesday evening, Melissa knew. I found out because she called. Not once. 3 times in rapid succession. Then text messages started coming through. Then messages through mutual friends asking if I could meet with her. Just for coffee, one of them said. She needs to talk to you about something important. I didn't respond immediately. I was focused on the transition work. Meeting with the acquiring company's leadership to discuss how we'd integrate Greencore's team and infrastructure. Making sure that the people who'd believed in this vision from the very start were taken care of, that their equity stakes were honored, that they understood their roles in the expanded organization. That was the priority. But eventually, I decided I would meet with her. Not because I was reconsidering anything, not because part of me thought we might get back together. I knew exactly where that conversation was going to go, and I knew exactly what I was going to do. I agreed to meet because I needed closure, because I needed her to understand and to show herself what had just happened. We met at a coffee shop in Cherry Creek, one of the nicer neighborhoods in Denver, about a week after the public announcement of the acquisition. It was early October 2021 by then, a place we used to go sometimes when things were still good between us, back when I was still just the guy with the expensive hobby. She was already sitting when I arrived, and I could see the moment she spotted me. Her whole demeanor changed. She tried to smile, like this was going to be a happy reunion. I sat down across from her. "Hi," she said. Her voice was different now, softer. "I'm glad you agreed to meet. I've been trying to reach you." "I know," I said. "I saw the news," she continued. "About Greencore, about the acquisition." I nodded. I didn't say anything. "Ryan, I need to tell you something." She leaned forward slightly. "I was wrong. I was impulsive and wrong, and I've been thinking about what happened at dinner, and She paused. I could see her working out how to say this. "I didn't realize the company was actually going to... I didn't think it would actually be worth that much. I thought it was just going to keep costing you money." There it was. The real reason for the coffee meeting. Not love, not regret about how she'd treated me, but the sudden realization that I was worth something after all. "I was confused when I ended things," she said. "I thought I was protecting myself, but I realize now that I made a mistake. A huge mistake. I miss what we had. I miss you. I think we should talk about trying again, about fixing this." I listened to her. I let her talk. And when she finished, I sat there for a moment, just looking at her across the table. "Melissa," I said quietly, "do you understand what you're telling me right now?" She looked at me, waiting. "You're telling me that you ended our engagement because you didn't believe in me. But I think what you're really saying is that you were afraid. Afraid that loving someone with an uncertain future meant you might end up uncertain too. And that fear made you choose safety over faith." She started to interrupt, but I continued. "You humiliated me publicly because you thought I was a failure. And now that you've discovered I'm not a failure, now that there's money involved, you want to come back. But that tells me everything I need to know about what we had. Or rather, what we didn't have. We didn't have trust. We didn't have vision. We didn't have respect. What we had was transactional. You were with me until you thought I wasn't going to pay off. And the second you thought I might, you wanted back in. That's not fair, she said. That's not what... It's exactly what it is, I said. I finished my coffee. It had gone cold while she was talking. And I don't have time for that anymore. I stood up. I reached into my wallet and left $40 on the table, enough to cover both of our coffees and a generous tip. I was going to make a statement about it. But then I realized something. Statements were for people who needed to convince others. I didn't need to convince anyone. The facts were already doing that for me. I wish you the best, Melissa, I said. I really do. But that's not happening, not now, not ever. I didn't wait for a response. I just turned and walked out of that coffee shop. She called after me once, but I didn't turn around. I didn't look back. I just kept walking. Because that was the thing about silence. That was the thing about not fighting back, not explaining yourself, not engaging with the drama. It was the most powerful response I could possibly give. Not rage, not revenge plots. Just the simple, absolute certainty that I had moved on to something bigger than her doubt could ever reach. And she was left sitting at a table in Cherry Creek, holding a cold coffee, finally understanding what she'd thrown away. After that meeting, I didn't hear from Melissa again. There were a few more attempts, a final text message 2 weeks later in mid-October, an email through a mutual friend asking if we could reconsider, but I didn't respond. There was nothing to reconsider. The chapter was closed, and I had moved on to something far more meaningful. The acquisition of Greencore wasn't just a financial transaction, it was validation. Not just for me, but for every person on my team who'd believed in the vision when belief was the only currency we had. The San Francisco investors didn't just buy a company, they bought into a philosophy. Sustainable design isn't just a trend, it's the future. And they understood that. Within the first year after the acquisition, by late 2022, Greencore doubled in size. The acquiring company integrated our team into their larger ecosystem, gave us resources we'd never had before, and let us scale operations across the entire West Coast. What I'd built in Denver grew into something that was impacting industries from California to Washington to Oregon. Awards started coming in. Recognition from environmental organizations and business publications. Features in Fast Company, Forbes, major industry outlets. The work was finally getting the attention it deserved. And by 2025, the foundation I'd established was supporting dozens of founders pursuing the same vision. But here's what mattered more to me than the money or the recognition. I started using the capital and the platform to invest in other people's impossible dreams. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd spent 3 years watching someone I loved mock what I was building. Now I had the resources to fund the ideas of people who believed in themselves, even when nobody else did. By early 2023, I created an investment fund focused specifically on sustainable technology startups. Early-stage companies that big venture capital wouldn't touch because they were too risky or the timeline was too long. I committed my first $10 million, drawn from the first payout tranche and reinvested profits, to this initiative, deploying it across 24 companies in the first year. I invested in solar energy innovations, in companies developing biodegradable materials, in teams working on climate adaptation solutions. I put my money behind founders who were thinking 10, 15, 20 years ahead, just like I had been. Some of those investments failed. That's part of the game. When you're backing early-stage innovation, not everything works out. But many of them didn't fail. And watching those founders succeed, watching them build something that mattered, watching them refuse to let doubt win, that gave me more satisfaction than any acquisition could have. My life fundamentally changed. By 2023, I moved into a penthouse in downtown Denver with views of the Rocky Mountains that reminded me every morning why I'd fought so hard for this. I traveled regularly to the Bay Area for meetings, to Portland for conferences, to Austin for industry events. I spoke at conferences about entrepreneurship and resilience. I mentored young entrepreneurs who were where I'd been, with a vision and nothing else. But the money itself wasn't the point anymore. It had stopped being the point the moment I realized that success wasn't about what you owned. It was about what you'd built and who you'd helped build it. I dated again. I met people who understood me differently than Melissa ever could. People who didn't measure my worth by my bank account or my job title. People who got it. Who understood that true ambition isn't about accumulating things. It's about creating meaning. One afternoon, about 18 months after that coffee shop meeting with Melissa, so around April 2023, I ran into an old mutual friend at a restaurant in downtown Denver. We grabbed lunch at one of the new spots that had opened near Cherry Creek, caught up, and inevitably the conversation turned to the past. "How's Melissa doing?" I asked. It wasn't a question loaded with malice. I genuinely didn't care anymore, but I was curious. My friend hesitated. "Honestly, not great. After you two broke up, she tried to use the whole thing to advance her career somehow. You know, positioning herself as having been involved in Green Corps or having some inside knowledge. But nobody took her seriously because, well, everyone knew what actually happened at that dinner. It kind of became a story people told in the Denver business community. Not in a good way for her." I didn't respond immediately. Part of me wanted to feel something, vindication, anger, satisfaction. But I didn't. I just felt neutral. That was the real victory. That I didn't care enough anymore to feel satisfied by her failure. "Where is she now?" I asked. "Still in Denver, working in marketing for some mid-sized tech company. Nothing special. She's fine. Just not where she thought she'd be, I guess. She got married actually about 8 months ago to some guy in finance. Seems like a decent match. They're living in a nice place in Lodo." I nodded. We went back to our meal. That conversation stayed with me, not because it hurt or healed anything, but because it confirmed something I'd already known. The best revenge wasn't destroying your enemy. It was becoming so busy building something magnificent that you forgot they existed. Melissa had wanted a man with money, stability, and prestige. She'd found that with someone else, finally. Good for her, I thought. She'd made her choice, and I'd made mine. I never had to fight her. I never had to expose her or embarrass her or make her pay for what she'd done. Life did that for me. My silence, my continued focus, my refusal to get drawn into drama, that was the only strategy I needed. The money came later. The recognition came later. But the peace of knowing I'd made the right choice about who to trust and who to believe in, that came immediately. The Denver business community eventually forgot about Melissa's involvement in the Green Corps story. They remembered me, though. They remembered the young entrepreneur who refused to give up on a vision that nobody else could see. They remembered the guy who turned a $40 million acquisition into a philosophy about helping other dreamers. And Melissa was just another cautionary tale people told their friends. The woman who had everything in reach and threw it away because she couldn't see the future that was being built right in front of her. That's the weight of her consequences. That she'll always be the person in this story who didn't believe, and I'll always be the person who did. Years have passed since that dinner in Denver, since that moment when Melissa said she couldn't marry a failed dreamer, since I walked out of that restaurant in late September 2021 and never looked back. I'm a different person now than I was then. Not because of the money or the success, but because I've learned something fundamental about the nature of conviction and belief. I learned that the people worth keeping in your life are the ones who believe in you before you have anything to show them, before the money comes, before the awards arrive, before the press writes about you. They believe in the vision because they can see what you see. They believe in you because they understand that building something real takes time, sacrifice, and a kind of faith that most people simply don't have. Melissa never had that faith. And looking back, I realize I spent years hoping she'd develop it. I spent years working, building, and waiting for the moment when she'd finally understand. but she never would have understood, no matter how much money I made. Because understanding would have required her to admit that she'd been wrong, that she'd doubted someone who turned out to be right. That's a difficult admission to make, and most people aren't equipped for it. The thing I want you to understand about this story, the thing that actually matters, is that I didn't win because I got revenge. I didn't win because I proved her wrong, or because the universe punished her for not believing in me. I won because I refused to stop believing in myself when everyone around me suggested that I should. That's the secret. That's what they don't tell you about success stories. It's not about the dramatic moment when you get your vindication. It's about the thousands of quiet mornings where you wake up and decide to keep going anyway. It's about saying no to people who don't see your vision. It's about holding your standards high enough that you're willing to walk away from anyone who tries to lower them. I could have married Melissa. I could have given up on Green Corps, taken a corporate job in Denver, bought a house in the suburbs near the office parks, and lived a perfectly comfortable life with someone who didn't believe in me. People do that every day. They compromise their dreams because they want the safety of being with someone, even if that someone doesn't truly see them. But I didn't do that. And the moment I decided not to do it, the moment I walked out of that restaurant, that was actually my moment of victory. Not the acquisition, not the money, not the acquisition announcement. That moment, when I chose myself and my vision over the comfort of a relationship, that's when I actually won. Everything that came after that was just the universe confirming what I'd already decided about myself. Melissa wanted stability. She wanted a man with a guaranteed paycheck and a predictable career path. That's not a character flaw. That's just who she was. But she chose to mock me for being different. She chose to publicly humiliate me because I wasn't the kind of man she'd decided she wanted. And that choice has defined her ever since. I don't think about her often anymore. When I do, it's not with anger or satisfaction. It's with a kind of quiet understanding. She made her choice. I made mine. Her choice kept her small. My choice opened up entire worlds. Here's what I know for certain. If Green Corps hadn't been acquired, if the deal had fallen through, if I was still grinding it out 3 years later with no guarantee of success, I still would have made the right choice walking out of that restaurant. Because the victory wasn't in the outcome. The victory was in the integrity. It was in refusing to apologize for believing in something. It was in maintaining my standards even when someone I loved asked me to lower them. That's the lesson I want to leave you with. Not the story of a man who got revenge, but the story of a man who simply refused to be diminished, who refused to apologize for having a vision that other people couldn't see, who refused to stay small so that someone else would feel comfortable with him. You don't need revenge. You need conviction. You need the kind of inner certainty that doesn't waver when people doubt you. You need to be willing to walk away from anything, even love, if it requires you to stop believing in yourself. That's what changed my life. Not money, not revenge, but the moment I decided that my own integrity was worth more than any relationship. I built Green Corps into something meaningful. I sold it for $40 million. I've invested millions into other founders' dreams. I've mentored hundreds of young entrepreneurs. I've created impact in an industry I care deeply about. And none of that would have happened if I'd decided in that moment to stay small, to apologize for my ambition, to become the man Melissa wanted instead of the man I actually was. When you're in the middle of doubt, when someone you love is telling you that your dreams are impossible, that you're wasting your time, that you should be more realistic, remember this story. Remember the man who kept building even when nobody believed in him. Remember the woman who walked away because she couldn't see what he was building. And then remember that years later, the world saw exactly what he saw. The world validated his vision. And she had to live with the knowledge that she'd had the chance to be part of something extraordinary, and she chose doubt instead. That's the weight of her choice. And that's the freedom of mine. If you enjoyed this story of cold-blooded revenge and gripping plot twists, please like this video and leave a comment telling me what you thought. And if you haven't subscribed to this channel yet, please subscribe now and turn on the notification bell to receive alerts about new stories like this one. We release brand new, unreleased stories every single day, each one more intense than the last. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.